Who said trio friendships don't work? Today we're going to be reviewing a very interesting Netflix series called Another Self. Now, Another Self is centered around three interesting women, their life, their friendship, and everything about it. You understand? And there's a pretty interesting twist to it, which is the spiritual side of it. The spiritual side of it makes us wonder how much of our life is truly ours, if our traumas can truly be inherited, how much of the burden we carry, how much of generational trauma we carry, and how it affects us, how it comes to play in our life. It makes us realize that a lot of times psychological issues can affect us physically. For instance, Ada, she had trembling hands, and when she resolved her internal dispute with herself and emotional trauma, when she started working on herself, when she accepted that she had things to work on, that was when she got herself and her hands stopped trembling. And this is not hard for me to accept, because I remember reading a book then, and it was a Joyce Meyer book, and she said that a man that was crippled started walking when he realized that he was not crippled for no reason. He was crippled because of he had unresolved emotional trauma. You understand? And then I can also relate, because I had a personal experience of when I was battling with guilt, and it affected me physically. I could not sleep, and I knew that sooner or later I was going to fall very sick. And instead of me running helter skelter for treatment and all of those things later, I decided to, own up to it and resolve it. You understand? So this movie makes us realize that a lot of times we carry trauma subconsciously, and it affects us physically. And a lot of times the way we treat our relationships, our friendships, the way we treat intimacy, the fears that we have as a result of childhood traumas or generational traumas, what we saw our parents doing, how we were treated, if we were loved or not, if we were abandoned or not. Because we could see some adults in that movie being scared to love, being scared to let go, being scared to move on because of their fear of abandonment, and they just had a lot of unresolved trauma and they had to deal with it. So now, that aspect of the spirituality is called spiritual constellation, right? And it just helps you. What you do is to pick somebody that represents you, and that person can practically feel something from your past, and it's left for you to agree on whether you can resonate with it or not. And if you cannot, you are supposed to go and do your findings and find out if what they are saying is real or not. Maybe somebody in your family was killed, somebody in your family was abandoned, somebody in your family was betrayed. When they tell you this is what happened, and the spirit of this person is not okay with this, you are left to figure out why, what exactly happened. Some people even go as far as finding out their family members' graves, finding their lost sisters like Ada, and so on. You understand? So it just makes me believe that this spiritual controls the physical. Not entirely, but it has a huge part to play. Now, I took some notes, and we're going to talk about the friendship between the three of them, Ada, Leila, and Sevgi. Sevgi had cancer, and what helped her was a couple of things, not just medicine, because she believed that she needed to resolve her emotional trauma before she could receive physical healing, and that's what worked for her. Now, that emotional trauma, after battling with generational trauma and discovering things from her past about her mom, about her dad, about her granddad, she even ended up meeting her granddad after a couple of years, and they talked and he gave her herbs, and she started getting herself later. After that, she accepted herself, accepted the cancer that she had and everything, and started having major improvements. That is not to say that physical drugs or scientific methods don't work for cancer. It is just to say that as you're taking physical medication, you should also do the inner work within yourself. And it is possible that there may be some changes or some sort of relief afterwards. That is it. So It's not also saying that herbs can cure cancer. Oh. It's not also saying it based on the movie because it seemed like it, but they did not. They were not so specific. You understand? Now, it also talked about how cancer changed Sevgi's priorities. She became more loving, ticked off things from her bucket list, which she would have not done if she felt like she had more time to live. You understand? And it was awesome. It was wholesome. Um, Ada has a very big resistance to healing. She did not believe in the emotional aspect and confronting past trauma and emotional trauma. She didn't believe in it because she works with logic. She's a doctor. And it is actually contrasting for you to be a doctor and believe in spirituality at the same time, because all these things that you're trying to talk about are things that medicine could just solve. You can just easily do surgery for them. There are methods to resolve this kind of things. So she realized that Zaman, the man, the spiritual um father, the man in charge of this whole tradition, was also a doctor, and that's changed our perspective on whether it is possible for you to be a logical person and also believe that the supernatural controls the physical. Your emotional side controls the physical. You understand? The movie is a really, really nice movie. It is educational, it is inspiring, it is wholesome. It is so wholesome. It talks about the relationships between them and their partners. Layla, a very submissive wife that went through thick and thin with her husband, and how she was able to, be a wife. That was her aspiration in life, being a wife. How she was able to handle her cheating husband, how she loved him regardless of what he was doing, and all of that. And it was weird to see. It was weird to see that. But that is the reality of so many women. So I'm glad that we're able to see that aspect of it, that aspect of that sort of reality. You get. We also got to see Ada enter different relationships and end those relationships because for one reason or the other they were not compatible. When she was with Toprak, I mean, I felt like, meeting somebody from the past might be what you need. You don't have to meet somebody new. Being with somebody that seems familiar is the best. And we ended up realizing that when you have a child, you are no longer a single person. You are now in a relationship with you and your child. So if it cannot work, it cannot work. Do you understand? Especially when the child's mother is still very, very present in the child's life and the child is still very, very young. And that was the case between Toprak and Ada. And it's so sad that it had to end because their love was so pure and so true. And as for Selim, a lot to say. I would say he was obsessed with Ada. I would say he was obsessed with the idea of being with her. And although he worked for a while, but they were not compatible. I would say I felt like he was intimidated of her and the fact that she was a strong woman at the beginning, and that was why he cheated on her. That's what I believe. But at the end of the day, we tend to realize that two truths can coexist. In as much as he was intimidated by her, at the same time, he also liked her a lot. Sevgi also found the man of her dreams that she also wanted and is currently trying to adopt. But I would say watch season 1, and season 2 is not as interesting as season 1, but it is worth the watch. Okay, so bye.